my biggest fear is being stuck in a here's what he does. Because I've seen so many people through years, they'll get stuck in a rut, and they're so scared to get out of that rut, like they're not going to be able to figure out how to do this next painting style. Well, I get on YouTube every hour. If y'all ever been on YouTube, it's like unbelievable all the different things you can learn within an hour. And that's, once I get out of school, it's a continual learning process of how do they do that? How do they do that? And so I don't just wonder how they did it. I go in there and I try to figure out how can I do that and make it better. To me, that's been the key to the little success I've had is never give up trying, never give up experimenting, experiment, constantly trying new things. And I'm going to show y'all some samples of stuff what I'm talking about. I do, like I said, I do graphic design, which you know, think of, y'all know what that means. I do a lot of computer stuff in Adobe, InDesign, Photoshop, Illustrator, and I design magazines. I design Sunday school literature for your kids and grandkids and stuff. So if any of y'all's kids go to church or VBS, more than likely I've had a hand in what they're looking at. So I hire illustrators, I hire photographers to come in there and do stuff for me, and then I'll put it all together and make it look good on the page. That's one of the things I do. The other things I do is I do illustrations for magazines. Besides life, I do other stuff for other people, billboards, CDs, stuff like that. And most of the stuff I do nowadays, again, because an illustrator time is money, is done in Photoshop. Not with photography, I still do illustration, but I'll take a drawing similar to this right here, and I'll scan that in, and then I use my computer in Photoshop to do color work for that, and then send them a digital file, done. Now, I say all that to say it's all the same. One of the things I've noticed is that people think, well, you're cheating. You're not doing it in painting. I'm using the same knowledge I have right here to take this drawing into a color illustration, as opposed to doing a 4-hour oil painting. I can do a 40-minute illustration and get the same result. Time is money. That's illustration. Now, this is the kind of stuff I doodle with, and little sketches like this. And I'll come up with little characters. And these will be used for like plot illustrations for magazine. And one of the things I do on this is, in fact, I've got a few little tips and tricks I can show you. This is a color erase pencil. It's in blue. And like I'll, see, you can see where he's kind of got a blue tint to him. But then if you got color brush, get a pencil over top of it. Another thing I'm going to show you today, I discovered something that I've been looking for in oil painting to speed things up. I started off doing, I do a painting partially in acrylic, because it dries quickly with a hair dryer. And then I finish it out in oil. This guy right here, he's one of the illustrators that I've hired before. He does everything in oil. You see that? This stuff dries instantly. And I asked him, I called up and I said, how do you do this oil wash? How does it dry so quickly so you can melt it the next day? I'm going to show you all day what he does. It's fascinating. It's blew me away. I do a lot of caricature. These jump passage around. These are all done in Photoshop. They start off with drawing like I showed you. I'll scan those in Photoshop. And I'll do them. But the technique is exactly the same. I start off with a rough drawing. I do an underlying painting just to get the tones and shadows and stuff. And I do a layer on top of that with the final details and highlights. So it's all the same. This is again something that I picked up from Rockwell. And this is how I start most of my portraits. Whether it be a portrait of a dog or a horse or whatever, I'll print out a full-size thing that I'm planning on painting. And then I'll take this down to my canvas. And by the way, I do use canvas sometimes, but most of the time I use masonite. It's just masonite by Home Depot. And they'll cut it down for you as well. So. But I'll take a black and white picture like this, and I'll tape it to the top. wherever I want to position it to, and use it like flat, and I'll use, of course, carbon paper underneath there, and that's where I just trace around the edges to get what I want. It's positioned correctly, it's the right size, I've got everything I need to get me started. So I'll just start off with a rough outline drawing, and then I'll come in there with a colored pencil. And it could be like if he has dark hair, I'll do a dark colored pencil. But if he has, reddish tones around his eyes or his lips or something, I may use this colored pencil around his lips. Or I may just decide to do it all the same color. Just that carbon paper you get.
Just carbon paper.
Yeah, just carbon paper. I've got to the point where I've made my own before. They taught us how to use that in school. You take a piece of tracing paper and you can take like a 6B pencil and rub the back of it. Then you can take a cotton ball and put lighter fluid on it and swirl that around on that carbon, and it locks it into the paper. And you tape the edges. I have a piece at home that I've had for 31 years now. I've continued to mark on it, rub some more stuff on it, and it's good to go. As long as you don't tear it. These are just regular Prismacolor pencils. They're wax-based, and so they don't, the reason I love them is they don't smear. You can get as dark as you want to, or as light as you want to, they just don't smear. And so, in experimenting, when I was doing the airbrush stuff, I thought, I wish I could combine the airbrush stuff with oil stuff that I do. What would that look like? So I've always loved Universal Monster stuff, and so I decided to paint Dracula. This started off as black and white airbrush illustration, just like I did the Chris Johnson painting. But then I took it and I did oil glazes on the top of it, because I wanted to add the color to it. So again, experimenting, just having fun. Typical type of oil painting I do now. This is not finished. I want to show you what an unfinished painting looks like. This is 3/4 of the way done. So I do a lot of paintings of horses and dogs. I love animal portraits. So this is one just for fun. I'll do these just because I love them, and then I'll sell them just on the glazes as well. So this is done with oil glazes. This is kind of what I'm going to show you all today. This was one of 3 more portraits I did for him in this sepia stuff. And this is the 3rd one I did of this same boy, of this same picture, to try to please this client. And I had everybody and their brother look at this and say, does this look like this picture that they gave me? Is this close to it? And we couldn't find anything wrong with it. But the client, she never would accept it. But what happened on this, and this is one thing I want to teach y'all today. When you run into a portrait, you better know up front, okay, does this person, do they love this photograph? Because this is the only thing I have to go off of. You can do a portrait from life, and you can kind of get it right, and their hair was a little messed up, but you don't have anything to compare it to. When you got a photograph in front of you, and they've got that photograph, and they're looking at this, they better love that picture. Otherwise, you're getting ready to waste a lot of time. The mistake I made was the client didn't love this picture. This person is 35 years old now. This was when they were 18. It just didn't look like it. So anyway, long story short, I had to wipe my tongue and say, I've gone as far as I can with 3 portraits. If you're doing a portrait of somebody, I don't care if it's whatever, you better make sure that they love what they're wanting to paint. Because I've been down that road. You don't want to do that. I wake up experimenting. This is a color experiment thing I've had. And, what does this color look like? What if you put more black to it? What if you add white to it? So I do stuff like this all the time, just so I can have reference of I'm looking for this particular color. Oh, that's Terra Rosa with white and da-da-da, So, and then I get into, I'm thinking, okay, if I try these experiments, if I'm doing portraits mainly, what do I mainly love to capture in a portrait? I love to capture eyes. If you capture a person's eyes, you just about got it. And so I'm constantly thinking in terms of painting eyes. What if they were blue? What if they were green? What if you use this first? What if you tried watercolor over She sounds like this all the time. Eyes, eyes, eyes. Oh, more eyes. Let's do some more eyes. Let's do, I've done thousands of eyes. And I mean thousands. I mean, each one of these, I want to see what yellow would look like under this one. What if you put pink in this one? What if you put a little green tint? You know, all this stuff is just practice, 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 and it's just, what if you used marker underneath oil? What if you used, you know, whatever? I mean, and then you think, okay, what if I attach watercolor paper to this with such and such, and you know, with that pencil work on that, he's just constantly trying new things. One of my favorite artists, portrait artists, this is not finished painting by no means, but he uses, he likes the feeling of painting on masonite, which I do too, but he also liked a little bit of texture to it. So he took muslin, you know what that is? And he put muslin on the board, just so it has a little bit of tooth to it. I mean, it's the same thing as a canvas board, I guess, but it's real light texture. It's just enough to, so I just kind of like threw this on there and started putting some colors on there.
Do you prime those boards before you paint on?
Yes, and you'll notice too, I used to prime, and I still do once in a while, prime stuff in white. But Drew Struzan, the guy that I learned this method from, he started priming in a light gray color. I thought, I wonder why he was doing that. What he would do was, he figured this was halfway there as far as a medium tone to your canvas. He did it in light gray because he knew he was going to put white highlights on top of this. He wanted those white highlights to really pop. One of the things I struggle with all the time is, and I think a lot of artists do, is finding your own style. And I still haven't found my own style yet. That's why I was trying to show you all this. I'm still searching for who, what, why, and I'm all over the place. Today I'm going to do a cartoon, tomorrow I'm going to draw something realistic, and I'm going to do a portrait of the over here, but I'm going to do a cartoon of a dog over here. Oh, you want pen and ink? I can do that too. Okay. Oh, no, you want oil? Okay, I'll try that. You know, it's magic. I can see why Van Gogh cut his ear off now. It's like, but I love doing it all. So I finally come to the point where I'm like, if you love doing it all, why don't you do it all? You know, I don't mean it in a bragging way, but it's art. It's supposed to be fun. And so if you're not having fun, what are you doing? So I'm having fun. So I put down a couple notes of how to find your style, and I'm the worst person to ask about these, but one thing I've come to realize that you need to paint only what you love. I've made that mistake before, where I painted for money, thinking I'm going to paint this painting, and someone's going to buy it, and I'm going to make a lot of money. And then you put all this time and effort into it, and you realize, no one bought that painting. I put a lot of time and effort into it, I don't want it. I don't think they want it. So if you paint what you love, like that's why I painted that Dracula. You know, if you buy it, great. If you don't, I love that painting. So don't paint just for money. You'll end up losing yourself. Paint 1,000 pictures. You know who Tony Robbins is, the motivational speaker? He said something one time. He said, if you want to be an expert in any field, all you have to do is read 10 books on the subject. Which, you know, maybe true, I don't know. But that's how I feel about art, is if you want to be a good artist, you know, paint 1,000 paintings. And you'll be a good artist. I mean, you'll learn how to paint or not paint, and you'll realize after painting that much paintings that you'll learn from them. Never stop experimenting. That's what I was trying to show you. Through the years, I've also tried to emulate other artists. I think that's another way of learning is once you see somebody's style you like, try to do what they do. And eventually you'll find stuff that you like what they do, and then you're not quite as good as they are at this, but hey, if I try this over here, and all of a sudden you kind of branch off into something else that becomes more of your style. But you start by, you know, emulating someone else. Show you different stages of painting. I'll get the final stage where you see what it looks like, and I'll show you stages in between, and then I can show you all the steps I take to get there. So, all right? Start off with a pencil drawing with physical color pencil. Okay? It can be a regular pencil, it doesn't matter. But if I start putting oil on top of this, what's going to happen? It's going to blur it, it's going to bleed. I'm going to show you something else too. These color erase pencils I use to draw with, I learned this by accident the other night. If I was doing this right here, and I use this, if I paint over there, it's really going to dissolve. But if I use spray fix, which you think would lock in the color, watch what it does to these two different kinds of pencils. One's a color erase pencil, one is a regular Prismacolor pencil that doesn't erase. This is spray fix. I learned that by accident the other night. That would run your nose, wouldn't it? But it hadn't done anything to this unless I start working on it. Okay? So I'll stop using this. Now I might use this for just a drawing, but I'm not making a paint with. I wouldn't use this for painting. Instead, I use acrylic, crystal clear, or it's actually acrylic Krylon, whatever. Use this in Walmart. Fix this drawing a bit better. Obviously, I don't draw eyeballs this big usually, but just for y'all saying, the crystal clear will lock it in without. And it says it dries within 12 minutes. I don't have 12 minutes. That's what this is. This is 30 seconds. Yeah. This right here doesn't make it dry faster.
But it makes you feel better about the process.
Yeah, it's dry. But 12 minutes is cut down to 5 seconds. Now, this is what I use. This is the brush I use to do to put the gesso on the thing, or the thing. I'll pour a little bit of gesso in the middle of the thing, and I'll start kind of swirling it around from the middle out. It just kind of spreads out evenly. So you can just kind of use this to brush that edge. I'm going to show you, this is the first stage. The second stage looks like this right here. It doesn't look like much. But you can see how fast, I'll show you how fast you can do this, get to this stage. Again, we're building up layers of color. This first stage, what I'm using up here is liquid. That's the only medium I use, liquid. It's a fast drying. If you did nothing to it, it's going to dry overnight. Okay, so that's good. These are all $3 brushes. These are all soft brushes, these Robert Simmons brushes, flats and rounds, you're about all use anymore. They do what I need them to do. Occasionally I use these two little brushes, but these aren't expensive either. So round. But I start off this drawing right here, let's say it's more detailed or whatever. And the first thing I always do is this. You want to put a barrier between this right here and the painting you're putting down. So I learned this from a guy who's an Asian portrait artist in Atlanta. He did these portraits in the mall, and that's where I learned this. He takes liquid just without any color on it, and he'll coat the whole thing. He does it on canvas. Again, I don't like to use canvas at my show. And it has to be just a real thin coat, just enough to cover it up. Now I've got a surface that's slippery and things are going to slide on it, which is what I want. So I've got the colors I'm using. You can see I've got a limited palette here. I've got a yellow, which I'm laying on now. I'll let you know in a minute. Burnt sienna, alizarin crimson. What blue is that? Ultramarine blue, titanium white, actually it's vanilla white, and Meridian green. Why did I choose these colors? They all have something in common. Do I know? They're all transparent. There's opaque colors, there's transparent colors. If you're doing glazes, you want to use transparent color, just like a transparent watercolor color. And so I use these colors. I can get just about any color I want to out of these colors here, mixed on one way or the other, darks and lights, anything. So I'm not going to worry about anything except for I think this person has kind of a reddish, ruddy skin to it. So which one's reddish, kind of ruddy? Dark sienna. So I've got a little bit of liquid on that, and I'm just going to go to town on it. If all I'm worried about is just the undertone of the feel of this person's face. Okay? Obviously that's kind of orange. You'll notice I'm cleaning my brush off, so I might take a little bit of blue. A little bit of liquid on it. And I might fill that in with a little bit of blue there. This is a girl, so she's going to have a little bit of this blue eyeshadow looking stuff at the top of her eye. Maybe a little bit of blue down here as well. So you can see how rough this is. It has to be clean. Has to be some of the turpentine or minerals here. Then you start wiping out. And you keep on wiping this off from your cloth too. It's going to be the clean. A little highlight up there, and a little highlight up there. A little highlight under your eyes might be. You can keep on getting ready to paint up there. So it kind of builds up on your paintbrush. But you can see real quickly, it's starting to look like something there. It's got mid-tones, it's got shadows. That's why I wasn't too concerned about, detail or anything like that. I'm just looking for generalized highlights and darks and stuff like that. Anyway, you get the idea on that. Now, it's still wet, right? It's very wet. So what I can do now, a couple of things. I don't have time for it to dry. I can sit here and add a little bit more, get some more texture into it if I want to. I can take the hairdryer for about 30 seconds. And then the magic is this right here. Now, I wouldn't do this on a fine art painting. I'll do it on an illustration all day long. Because I don't care what the final thing is on an illustration. All I'm trying to do is get the final art done and in the client's hand. If it was a painting I'm going to sell, I'd take my time on this. I wouldn't rush it with a can of something that I'm not sure how well it's going to hold up. Just the light part of it. And then try this again for about 30 seconds. It's dry already. I just put liquid and paint on this thing, it's dry. Now that's the first stage, okay? At this stage I can keep on, okay, once we start the next stage, what's the first thing I want to do? You always put liquid on first. Liquid's the next stage. If this isn't completely dry, which I'd probably dry a little bit more, then this stuff right here might take some of the paint off. But it's not taking any of it off. I'm on to my next stage, okay? So now I'm going to strengthen some of those colors here. A little bit more blue in there. And then around the eyes, I might do some pink. And I'm not really mixing these colors, I'm just putting colors on there. Like pink and bright up here. Around your eyes might be pink. Right here might be a little pink. Again, I'm just trying to build up some colors now. And I can still come back with a clean brush. And I can still start wiping out some of this stuff. But you'll notice each time I wipe out, there's a little bit less stuff to wipe out. It's just starting to build up different degrees of that. Then what I do at this point is I dry that, and then I can start working on some of the detailed areas, like putting in some of the darker lines, making them more crisp or whatever. I did this painting Friday night in 3 hours. And I could have done that if I wouldn't be able to dry stuff. This I wouldn't consider totally finished, but you can get an idea of how fast you can do one if you want to keep it rough like this. This is the next stage. This is what I just showed you. After I did the drawing, I put in the colors, kind of wiped out some of the colors. I'm just trying to get something on there to start to show form and lights and darks and stuff like that. So this would be the next stage. At this point, I'm going to start. What do I need to do first? And get it wet. I usually paint on the whole thing at one time. You can do a section if you want to, but I just like to, once I get the paint on a brush, I like to just spread the love. This is the thing about oil glazes that most people miss. In watercolors, you can build up colors lightly, but you always have to keep in mind, I need to save the white of the paper for my whites. Well, traditionally in oil painted glazes, you're kind of doing that same thing, but I've switched gears a little bit. I'm going to add white to my oil glazes, and because I can dry them now, then I can do glazes on top of that. So right now, there's areas I'm like, I don't like that color. I'm trying to get to a closer color. I'm going to switch brushes actually too. Same flat, just a smaller brush. And I've already got stuff on there. Now, when you're painting, this is something that is elementary to me, but you may not know this. When you're painting something in values, everybody knows what the word value means, how dark or lighter the color is. This is a mistake I used to make. I don't make this anymore. When I'm looking at trying to make a color, for example, the first thing I think of is what value is that color. His head here, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the lightest, 10 being the darkest, what value would you give his forehead? 2, 3, 4, maybe 1. Okay, so if I'm trying to come up with a color to match this right here, would I start with a dark color or would I start with a white? Okay, so when you're thinking about value color, like this dark shadow down here, yes, we know it's a darker version of his chest right here, but that's the dark value. So I'm not going to start with, I'm going to start with that skin color, I'm going to add dark to it. Now I'm going to start with a dark color and add skin color to it. If it's light, like this right here, I'm going to start with white, then I'm going to add color to it. It keeps you from having a pile this big of paint that you're not going to use. So if you're a light value, start with a little white. That's why I grabbed the white right here, over here. And this pinkish color, we know that adds that pink to it right there. You can dip into this right here, or you can dip into that, it doesn't matter, because you've already liquid on it. But I like it nice and soupy. But I'm going to start painting with lighter colors on there. I apologize if I can't see through me, because I know it's hard to see some stuff. And some of this is going to be too light, so I'm just going to start adding a little bit of this pink. And then you get some of this blue just for fun. You get some blue tints in these colors. There's a difference. A great painter would just do like this, and be done. I can't do that. I've learned that I can't do that. But I know that I can go in there and I can dabble this thing all day long and make mistakes. And I've learned how to fix these things. I learned that it's not the end of the world if you do like this. It's not the end of the world. That's what this little thing's for. If you build up your underpainting and dry that, good, I can start over again. I don't have to worry about this. So that's what oil glazes is all about. It's really a better way of painting in a way that you can make mistakes like this. So I'm just kind of like building up colors a little bit at a time, and you'll start to see it shape. I'm putting some of the colors around the edge of his face and around his eyes, a little more red tint there, real soupy. It's so thin I can still see the painting underneath it. Where I have, if I want a blue black, what color would I add to it? I mean, if I have a reddish tint black, what color would I add? Red. I mean, I don't mean to sound stupid, but that's how simple it is. I start off with a 100, and his sweater is kind of a blue-black color. It's dark, not like a blue to it. And then I can start adding that to it. But because I've already got that base already down there, it's pretty easy. It's like putting a second coat on a piece of furniture. First coat doesn't look too good. Once you start putting that second coat on there, then it's like, oh, you're good. Covers up your mistakes. And the cool thing is, if you mess up, you know, you can wipe it out. Or that's not dark enough. Well, dry it. Because you can sit there and keep on painting on this, and it's not going to get you anywhere. It's just going to be the same thing. And as soon as you dry it, put a third coat on it. Oh, there it is. Okay. So it's just a matter of building up colors a little bit at a time. This is where you have to start seeing things. It's not so much the color as it is the value of it. Like when I started painting this beard the other day, it's got a little bit of green to it, a bit of blue to it, so I started painting that, and I got way too dark with it. So it's not a matter so much of the right color as it is the right value. If I put this white thing next to his hair right there, even though we think he has white beard, look how dark that is next to his hair. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for the color, I'm looking for the value, how dark his hair is. So I want to paint it that dark. I don't want to waste my time painting, I think it's white. Now I'm back in that, paint it that dark to start with. They said it had a little bit of green to it, got a little bit of blue to it. So I'm going to add a little bit of green, a little bit of blue. So I'm going to start laying in his hair color. Beard color. Because I'm painting thin, because I've got that painting underneath it, I don't have to be all concerned about is this the right color, is this the right shade, whatever. I can always wipe it out. I'm just trying to get the right value in there as quickly as I can. I can adjust all this stuff later. He's got this color in his hair, he probably has some skin too, so I'm going to carry that over into some of his skin tones somewhere. I add some interest to it. I'm going to darken this up now, just to kind of start to see that. I'll just use this one little brush right now. Gliding on there. Got that dark side of his face right here. Dark underneath his nose, so I'm going to start kind of coming over that.
What color green do you have on your palette?
It's Meridian.
Meridian. Thank you.
It's a real transparent green. It's great when glazed.
Mike, are you careful with the amount of liquid you use, or is there any cracking issues or anything if you got just way too much on there?
I've never had that problem because I paint with liquid pretty thinly.
Okay.
I don't use it real thick, I guess what I'm saying. Obviously that's too dark. If it's too dark or too thick, just blot it or wipe it out a little bit. In fact, even at this stage over here, now that I've got some paint on there, I can start doing this. I can start kind of rubbing it in. I can use my finger. If I want to, rub it in a little bit. I'm just trying to get the soft edges. I'm just trying to get the feel of the colors, the values. And I can use this to erase as much as paint. See how he's got some white under the eyes right here? not white, it's light pink. I'm not seeing it on mine, so what I typically have is my little stick here. Keep my hand off this, but I don't have it, then I'm just gonna wipe that out. Same thing with others, I'll have those right there. Now I've got some paint liquid on there, I can start pushing this paint around and making it work for me a little better. Soften edges. Pulling paint off, pushing paint around. If I see an edge is too hard, then I'll just take this brush and just soften it out a little bit. Like this is too hard right there, so I kind of dry this off a little bit. And try to soften it out. That's already dried on there a bit. I can come back and fix that later. I mean, I guess you probably should be more careful with it than I am, but.
You have good ventilation in your studio?
No, I don't. I'm constantly trying to improve the values. If you have the wrong value, your paint is never going to work. It's too light, it's too dark, push the paint around, and it's starting to look like something now. And I've only used a few colors that I've gathered. Just about all I need is just a few colors. I like to paint, I like to keep things kind of rough and kind of spontaneous. Maybe kind of add interest to it. Now some of these lines in his hair, obviously they're kind of rough. I can take this dry brush and I can just kind of like soften those out a little bit. As you can see, I'm just kind of constantly moving my brush around, softening things, hardening edges. Now notice too, I never noticed this about myself until someone brought my attention. I see a lot of artists do this right here. They'll take one little stroke and they're trying to see if that's the perfect stroke or not. It's not. This is what I do. I'm constantly moving my brush. Okay? You can't tell how many strokes I use to paint a painting, but I'm constantly busy moving my brush around. That's how you do it, painting faster, and you get that spontaneous look to it. I'm going to put some of that blue inside. This is where I'm going to switch to a little bit smaller brush. This again is a Robert Simmons round brush, but it's not round at all. It's kind of like it's worn out and frayed. But I just use this to kind of push the paint around and get a little bit smaller on things. So I'm going to take some of the blue, a little bit of white, and make a grayish color to his eyes. And again, because I've got that drawing underneath, everything's kind of like set in stone for it. I know exactly where this stuff's going to fall. I don't have to worry about this. Got a little bit of blue tint around his eyes. I'm going to use that same blue. Okay, now that I've used this little brush right here, I've got the star on each of them. Now I'm going to go to a more refined tip brush. This has a better tip on it. People gross out when I do this, but like that all the time. This is what I would use to define stuff on his face or his eyes. And I roll it around so I get paint on all parts of it. I wish I had my stick here. I don't think I'll use this. This is where I come in and I start doing details. Possibly around and lines. Our point.
As the liquid starts drying, do you ever find yourself digging holes?
I have before, but the beauty of this is this. If you get to the point where your liquid's kind of getting sticky, and you're like, this doesn't feel right anymore, the best thing to do is stop and dry it, and then start fresh again. That's been the key for me. And we'll try that right now to see if it works. If I dry it for 30 seconds, if I spray the stuff on there and put dry 30 seconds, then we'll see if it's dried enough to go forward. We'll use this stuff. I'll probably just let that dry, come back tomorrow, work back to it. At this stage, what do I need to do?
Liquid.
Liquid. I could go in there without liquid and start painting on this thing, but what's going to happen is I'm going to build a thick color of paint, and it's not going to flow real smooth. It's going to feel dry. It's like I'm not going to have a good smooth transition. But with this liquid on there, it assures me that if I mess up, it'll start to kind of just let it dry. So what happens there? If I would have dried that a little bit longer, let it sit for just a little bit longer, that wouldn't happen. You gotta be careful with that. But I'm not concerned. I can fix that. And I can even do it with this big brush, it's not gonna matter because I'm just trying to put some stuff on there. This is where this comes in handy when you get some really cool textures in there. Here's something that I get asked all the time, and every artist does. When do you know you're finished? You ever get that? How do you know you're finished with this painting? And here's what I come up with. You're not trying to please me. You're not trying to please her. Please you with your painting. It's finished when you say it's finished. If you can honestly look at yourself and say, this is the best I can do. And if you'll just be honest with yourself, that's all you can do. There's so many times that I'm like, I'm finished because I'm tired of working on it. That's not finished. That means you're tired of working on it. But if you can look at it and say, okay, I've done as far as I can go with this thing, and I'm not going to go any further, because it is as good as I can do, and it's finished. But until that point that you can be honest with yourself, it's not finished. This one right here is not finished. It may be finished to you, it may be finished to you, it's not finished to me. And until I get to that point where I can say, I've let it rest for a while, I've come back and looked at it, I've looked at it upside down, I've looked at the mirror, until I can, because what's going to happen is that this happens to me all the time. You go back and you see a painting you did 10 years ago, and if you're like me, you're just like horrified. Why did I let that go out the door? Why? It's not finished. It's horrible. And so, it's a nightmare. And you don't, you get to the point where you don't want to put your name on anything anymore, because like, I know it's going to come back to haunt me later on. So every painting you do, you need to go into it with, this is the best I can do, June 21st, 2014. This is it. And if you can't honestly say that to yourself, then you need to keep on painting. That's my rendition of when it's finished, I guess. Highlights. That really starts to make it pop. Again, with a soft little brush with a liquid on there. It's magic. If I didn't have this liquid on there, this would not glide on here near as well. And I'd be fighting it. And that's in that pink and there's beard right now. There's parts of the beard that are lighter than others. I want to kind of accentuate those. And there's some of it still in shadow. If you want to leave in shadow. Because it's a glaze of different values and different layers I'm looking for here. The underlayers are going to show through. That's what's going to make this thing beautiful, is when you start seeing the under layers on top of the highlight layers. It's going to start making sense. Now, I don't want to say there's a rule, the more layers, the more beautiful, but I've noticed that a lot of times when I'm doing layers, it's like the more layers I do, it just adds more depth to it. I can't tell you how much I appreciate y'all coming out today. And on a Sunday, remember beautiful weather, it's I'm not sure that I would do there, so. A lot of times around the eyes, there's a lot of red. It's like getting on the nose as well. That's what all the blood flows through the eyes and through the nose area. And that's what kind of makes it look more alive when you start adding that color into that. Better shapes and stuff on these. Softening edges. Allows me to do that, but I have to push quite a bit of the paint and worry about other things at this point.
And how do you get the detail in hair and facial hair? I have trouble doing that.
Well, the first 3/4 of the painting, I'm just trying to get to where we're at right now. I'm just trying to get shapes and shadows and stuff like that. Details will always come in last. And I'll take that fine brush, and every once in a while, if you squint your eyes and look at this, you lose all the detail. That's kind of what I'm trying to do here, is give me a squinted version of the feel of this right now. The right values, the right color, the right shapes, the right flavor. It's not till the very end that I start putting in these hairs if I was going to do that. I may not have to. Some people don't like that. Some people just leave it like that. But I'll dry this and I'll come back with that, thin brush, with that little point brush, or make this long liner, and I may start adding in details like that. But I'll probably wait till after I dry it, and then I can come back in and I can start putting in, little brushes like that. Too big, but you get the idea. It doesn't take much to give it a lot of detail. And all of a sudden you start getting a feel for the, it's not just a straight beard, it's like curly looking. But again, if that's too much, you can kind of dampen it a little bit by just doing like that. And it's still got a little bit of that, but it's taking away the intensity of it. If it's way too white or way too dark or whatever, just dab it a little bit and it'll kind of soften it. And we can do that with just here on the sides even, and that like that. I wouldn't do a whole lot with this, but it just, a little bit goes a long way. It's kind of like you see these paintings where like the landscape and you see every blade of grass. You don't want to see that. You don't want to see every little leaf on the tree or every little thing of bark. You don't get an idea of what it looks like, and then every once in a while there's some hints of that detail, but not the whole thing details. In real life, you see stuff that's fuzzy, you see stuff that's in detail. You don't see it all in chalk focus. It kind of takes away from the realism of it. If you see some of it blurry, some of it in focus, that's more religion.
It's like a
Again, if it says wet paint on it, I'm able to push this paint around and just kind of start manipulating it. If I see the edges too harsh, I can soften it with the brush. I got them pretty finished, but if I wanted to add some more depth to it, then probably what I'd do is I'd start putting in some color glazes on it. Now, when you put a color glaze on something, all it's going to do is darken it. So you got to be careful with that. But right now, I like it pretty much. But if I wanted to, I could come back and say, I really want to add more of a blue tint to it or something, or a green tint to the skin. He's too red looking. So again, I'd come back with liquid. Make sure you get liquid on it. What tint do you want him to be? Green, blue, red?
green.
Green tint to it? So which color would I pick? I've got this transparent green, okay, Viridian green. And I'm going to put green on it. I've really screwed up now. And I don't know how to get out of this. Okay? He's got streaks on it. He didn't look good. Greenish tint. I've lost all my highlights. I love doing this, by the way. When people think you've messed it up. I'm going to blot this a little bit, just to kind of give it some more textured look to it. And I'm gonna start pulling out the highlights again. I'm gonna get rid of most of this green. It's gonna have some green to it because I put green on it. But I'm gonna start pulling some of this stuff back out. This green on him, or blue, or red, or whatever color you put on him, it's just gonna add to the depth of his skin. So I'm not pulling all of it out. I'm trying to find the highlights. And I'm trying to pull those out. His hair. I'm keeping some of that green on there. It's going to make this red cheeks really pop. It also gives unity to all the colors, or harmony I should say. They all have a green tint to them now, even though they're red or pink or blue or whatever. They're greenish red or greenish blue. So it kind of harmonizes the whole painting. And you haven't messed up a thing. It's scary to do it first. But if you do it enough, you start realizing this really added something to my painting.
So you're not going to do the Krylon spray because you're doing something better quality. You let it dry, you said, then come back the next day, you still do that coat of liquid first?
Yeah.
Okay.
The only reason I'm using that Krylon paint, or that
Right, just
to speed it up. It does something to the paint, it locks it in, and gives you a layer of, okay, I can dry this now. Like the only reason I would use that is either in a demonstration, or if I was doing an illustration that had to have it out the door the next day.
I was just making sure you use the liquid when you started again, when you didn't use the Krylon, right?
Yes. Yeah, liquid is the key to this. And if I want to, I can come back and dab a little bit more, get some more of that off there. And, you know, it's never too late to say, I don't like this at all. This is not where I was thinking it was going. Or just wipe it off. I mean, that's why I love painting in glazes. You can't screw it up. I mean, you can, but you can always fix it. So whatever I've done today, this could have been liquid pink or whatever, but I haven't screwed anything up because that liquid is it just slides right off. Paint that way, you're not going to mess up. And that's why I think anybody can paint. I really do. If you can trace, if you can look at it and say, okay, this is pink or green, put that on there, and then wipe out the highlights so you see the highlights. And oh my gosh, it's like a photograph. It's almost like an insult to me. Because that's not my intent. Or it's not anymore, I should say. I like painting to this stage and maybe a little bit further than this stage. Just so people can see, oh my gosh, this is a painting. The closer you get up to it, you see my fingerprints, you see my, whatever on there.